All right, if you're a developer using PC Guard, you've probably felt that little bit of a grind, protecting every single new build one by one. It can be a real chore, right? Well, what if I told you that you could automate that entire process? That's exactly what we're going to dive into today. We are going to unlock the full power of PC Guard's command line interface, or what we call the CLI.
So you might be asking, why even bother with a command line when there's a perfectly good graphical interface? And the answer is just one word: automation. Look, manually protecting every build is just a recipe for wasted time and, worse, human error. The CLI lets you script the whole thing, making it super fast, perfectly repeatable, and just completely reliable.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with why automation is so important. Then we'll get into the basic command syntax and the key options you need to know. After that, we'll put it all together in a really practical example. And then we'll wrap up with the core benefits. Sound good? Okay, let's jump right in.
First things first, we gotta understand the syntax. You can think of this as the basic grammar for every single command we're gonna build. Every command you run is made up of three key parts. First, you've got the program path. That's just telling the system where to find the pcguard.exe file. Second, you have the options, which are the specific actions you want PCGuard to take. And third, you have the project file that you're working with. Simple as that. And when you put it all together, the structure looks just like this. But hey, let me point out the single most common thing that trips people up: those double quotes. If any part of your file path has a space in it, and let's be real, program files always does, you have to wrap that path in quotes. If you don't, the command will just fail. It's a simple mistake, but a very common one. So keep that in mind as we move on to the really fun part: the options. The options. This is where the real power is. Seriously, think of these as your personal toolkit for protection. And what makes them so incredibly flexible is that you can use them to override settings that are already saved in your project file, right on the fly. Okay, let's look at the core controls. Process is basically your go button. For full hands-off automation, you're going to want to pair it with silent, which gets rid of all the pop-up messages. Save lets you write any of your command line changes back to the project file. And skip APOC. This one's a great time saver. It intelligently skips any files that you've already protected. Next up, we have file management. Now, this is what makes the CLI absolutely perfect for build pipelines. Instead of being stuck with the file names saved in your project, you can use -file and -output to dynamically tell PCGuard exactly which application to protect and exactly where to save the final result. This right here, this is the key to true flexible automation. And this brings us to what is probably the most important takeaway of this whole thing. The command line is king. Any option that you use here will always overwrite what's in your project file. This is an incredibly powerful concept. It means you can have one generic project file that you use as a template and then just adapt it on the fly with different command line options for dozens of different builds. So let's see what that actually looks like in a real script. Theory is great, but let's get our hands dirty and see how this works in practice. Batch files are a super simple but really effective way to automate a whole sequence of commands, which makes them absolutely perfect for what we're doing. But before we look at the code, I have to give you a critical warning. Please always test your script and make sure it works perfectly before you add that silent flag. Why? Because if there's an error in silent mode, the script might just fail without telling you, and you could accidentally ship an unprotected application. So test it first, then automate silently. All right, so here's a really common scenario for you. You have a main executable file and a DLL that both need protection. Doing this manually after every single compile is, well, it's a pain. So let's automate it. Okay, let's walk through this script. First, we set a variable for the PCGuard path. This just keeps things neat and tidy. Then you see the two main commands, one to protect the EXE and another for the DLL. Notice how each one is using a different project file, but we're still overriding the input and output paths. But this last part, this is the most important piece. We check the error level. PCGuard returns a 0 for success. So this simple if statement lets our script automatically tell us if the protection worked or if there was a problem. It's really that simple. And once you have a script like this up and running, you unlock some absolutely huge benefits.
So we've gone all the way from the basic syntax to a fully automated script. Let's just take a moment to recap the huge benefits this is going to bring to your workflow.
The benefits here are just crystal clear. First, you automate those repetitive tasks, which saves you a ton of time and effort. This also ensures that every single build is protected with the exact same consistent settings. No more guesswork.
You can then integrate PC Guard directly into any automated build pipeline, like for CI/CD. And finally, you get reliable, scriptable feedback on success or failure, which makes your entire process so much more robust.
You know, mastering the command line isn't just about saving a few clicks here and there. It's about building a more professional, more reliable deployment process from the ground up. You've just seen how easy it is to automate your software protection. So the final question I have for you is this: what other parts of your workflow could you streamline next? Thanks so much for tuning in.